Ask most casual moviegoers who invented the sexy space girl, and they'll say Jane Fonda, Barbarella, 1968. They're not entirely wrong, but they're not right either. Barbarella didn't start this genre. She cashed in on it. By the time she floated onto screens in her zero-gravity striptease, drive-ins had already been running Space Babes for over a decade. I'm not going to list every one of these movies today. That would take all night. The Ship of Monsters throws so many genres into one pot that it's a wonder the film holds together at all. Pulp sci-fi, monster mayhem, slapstick comedy, a touch of gothic horror, and, somehow, singing cowboys. Two Venusian women, Gamma and Beta, arrive on Earth tasked by their queen with finding men to help repopulate their planet after the male population was wiped out. They've already rounded up a menagerie of male monsters and locked them aboard their spaceship, though the film never quite explains the plan for using them. After crash landing in Mexico, both women fall for a singing cowboy, and things go sideways fast. Beta turns out to be a vampire, and when he starts favoring Gamma, she lets every monster on the ship loose out of pure jealousy. Everything about the production reads as cheap and shameless, right down to the crew testing whether the air outside the ship is breathable by simply stepping out and walking around. The songs exist to be skipped, but the monster designs have real charm, and the leads, both former Miss Mexico title holders, throw themselves into the absurdity without a hint of self-awareness. It's the kind of film where a robot falls in love with a jukebox, and nobody involved seems to think that's strange. This is a Mexican production, filmed in Spanish, but it's easy to find. The full film is on the Internet Archive with English subtitles. Fire Maidens from Outer Space starts with astronomers spotting a newly discovered 13th moon orbiting Jupiter, and somehow, within a single week, a crew is already on its way to check if it can sustain human life. Two of the astronauts pass the flight prepping for what's ahead in the most on-brand way possible: shaving. They land on a planet with a suspiciously breathable atmosphere and immediately run into a lumbering, ape-like creature pawing at a screaming blonde. The men draw their weapons, chase it off, and get led into an underground palace built by the last survivors of Atlantis, a lone old ruler, and roughly a dozen women who make up his entire remaining civilization. One of the astronauts is informed on the spot that, by the laws of Atlantis, he now belongs to the woman he rescued, and the rest of the crew spends the scene visibly calculating which maiden they can save next. Then comes the ritual dance, less choreography, and more an extended excuse to let the camera linger. It's cheap, it's clumsy, and the special effects budget clearly went almost entirely toward that one rubber monster suit. But there is such pure, shameless commitment to the premise that, if you have a heart, you can't really hold any of it against the movie. Originally made in Italy in 1966 as 2+5 Missione Hydra, this little space opera did not reach American theaters until 1977, when Star Wars had suddenly made every old spaceship look like a possible payday. So it was cut down, dubbed into English, renamed Starpilot, and sent out right into the new sci-fi boom. The story begins with geology professor Solmi, who is called to a site outside Rome after strange recordings are detected underground. He enters the caves with his team and discovers an alien ship hidden beneath the surface. Inside, they meet Kaina, the alien captain, who needs parts to repair her ship and decides the best way to get them is to take Solmi's daughter, Luisa, hostage. Then the plot starts collecting complications. Chinese spies show up, the situation gets out of control, and Kaina is forced to take off with everyone still aboard. Once the film gets into space, Luisa, played by Leontine Snell, starts stealing scenes. Alien men, new planet, possible danger. Luisa mostly seems interested in whether her charm still works out here, and apparently it does. At one point, she even asks whether they make movies on this planet, as if being abducted across the galaxy might still lead to a screen test. It has no business looking this good. The camera work is beautiful, the sets and direction are simple but weirdly effective, and the whole thing is dumbly charming. Remember Beta from The Ship of Monsters? 6 years later, the actress who played her, Lorena Velasquez, Miss Mexico herself if you'd forgotten, shows up again in Planet of the Female Invaders. This time she plays not one role, but two. Identical twins on opposite sides of a palace coup. A flying saucer swoops down near an amusement park and grabs a group of people off the rides, then hauls them across space to the planet Sibila, populated entirely by women. There, Queen Adastrea rules through fear, cold, vain, and very pleased with herself, while her identical sister Albernia is gentler and already positioned as the prisoner's best hope against her. The plot doesn't offer anything fundamentally new. It's the same battle of the sexes setup, leaning on predecessors like Catwomen of the Moon. But it's a fun and worthy entry in the genre. For anyone who's made it this far, I've saved two real treasures, and one of them is Nude on the Moon. I can't show you most of the footage, and if I had the same restrictions with words, Boobs on the Moon would cover it. The film comes from Doris Wishman, one of the few women directing exploitation pictures at the time, who built an entire career on cheap nudist camp movies, dressed up with just enough plot to dodge censorship problems. This one was her attempt to send that same formula into space. A scientist inherits enough money to finally finish building his rocket, then heads to the moon with his colleague. They expect a barren wasteland and instead find a lush garden world run by a race of telepathic, barely dressed moon women. One of the astronauts starts falling for the Moon Queen herself, which complicates the trip home considerably. Skipping trained actors cuts your budget dramatically, and skipping costumes cuts it even further. It's not exactly an Oscar strategy, but it does get a movie made, and in this case, that was clearly the priority. Space Thing follows a science fiction fan named James, who falls asleep after a night of reading pulp comics and dreams himself straight into the year 2069. In the dream, he's an alien posing as a human aboard a starship commanded by a woman known only as Captain Mother. His mission is to stop the crew from reaching his home planet, Planetaria, though anyone watching can tell the alien landscape is really just a stretch of California desert standing in for outer space. None of that plot really matters, because the film exists purely to move from one encounter to the next, using the dream framework as a flimsy excuse to justify literally anything happening on screen. Its own producer, David Friedman, once called it the worst science fiction movie ever made, and the film does very little to argue the point. One last thing you need to know before we close this out. The opening credits are painted directly onto bare skin. Not that anyone was going to complain.